Right, so your challenge today is to present a scenario, come up with and present a scenario around a future cyber catastrophe in 2020. Mark's going to come up and give you a bit of a briefing about how to do that, and you're going to start that challenge at 9:30, and you need to finish it by 11:15. You're going to have to present your work, okay, but you are not allowed to stand up and do a normal presentation. You're not allowed to stand up and talk in front of some PowerPoint slides. You're going to have to come up with an innovative way of getting your message across about that disaster, okay? And it needs to be no more than 10 minutes long, whatever it is you're going to do, okay? So get time to get your thinking hats on, get the coffee going, because you've got an hour and 3/4 to come up with a challenge and then also present it back without standing up and utilising PowerPoint. Remember, you have all the PCs upstairs to utilise. You've got smartphones which can capture video, okay? You've got all of these other resources available in the room. So think about how you can use those. So over to Mark, who's going to give you a briefing on things you to think about when you're developing your disaster.
Oh, I don't need that down, actually.
No, you need it for the...
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't make up this element that Dan's just added to the exercise, because this exercise is already really difficult in an hour and 45 minutes. When I've done it with other groups, MSc students, we've taken 2 days and they've had months of preparation for the exercise. Basically, what's difficult about this exercise is I want you to put your minds into the mind of a terrorist or a criminal in 2020. Yeah, I want you to kind of think about the world from a terrorist or a criminal's point of view, which is hopefully very difficult for most of you. And I mean, the thing is, whoever's really good at this exercise, we'll be keeping an eye on you. And I want you to think about emerging trends. I want you to think about what the UK looks like in 2020. Yeah, what are the trends in technology that you guys see, and the trends in society more generally? Trends in policy. For example, this morning before I came here, I opened the newspaper and I saw that there's a debate going on about the digitalisation of the benefit system. Yeah? So across all areas of life, everything's becoming increasingly networked, digitalised. Yeah? Where are these emerging trends heading? Yeah, that's kind of what we're interested in Security Lancaster, and the bit that I'm in charge of, Security Futures. Yeah, what are the emerging trends? Yeah, and you guys are hopefully really good at kind of giving us some insight into those trends, because you're young. Yeah, when you've been in an organisation for 20 years or even 10 years, you adopt a kind of a mindset that becomes increasingly conventional in many ways. Yeah? Because there's a kind of party line, there's a kind of doctrine that you absorb, and sometimes you need kind of new perspectives to shake things up. And a kind of very technical reason why this is important is the fact that you guys understand the technology probably better than people 10 years older than you, or 20 years older than you. Yeah? And you use technology hopefully in a different way. So you have new insights to give us into what's going on in technology. Yeah? And so what I want you to do is to choose a technology or a policy that we see emerging in society and think how terrorists or criminals could use it in 2020. How would you attack the UK, or one aspect of the critical infrastructure of the UK in 2020? And one of the things we've done with previous groups is get people to kind of present the scenario or the story that you're going to create in as interesting way as possible. So when I did this earlier in the summer, you know, I said to the computer scientists, lots of people who've kind of been in the military, in working for big corporations, I want you to come up with a short film about an event in 2020. Or you can present it in any way possible. You could come up with a graphic novel. You could come up with a short story. But the key thing is, I want an analysis of how a technology is going to play out. Yeah, it's a story about technology, people, and society. Yeah, what are the social consequences of the technology? You know, give a narrative that is rich in the technical detail that you guys have and lots of other policymakers and analysts don't have. Yeah, that's kind of your added value in the exercise. And I think it's useful to think about the future, think about emerging trends, because one of the things that I think happens when people get into the workplace is, you know, in such a competitive world, you have to be able to innovate. Yeah, and you have to be able to kind of look to the future to kind of generate new ideas that are going to make you valuable. Yeah, and so you have to become people who look at emerging trends and look at how things could play out. You know, what's on the horizon in terms of new technologies. I mean, when I did this exercise earlier in the summer, there was a guy who must have been in his 50s who ran his own business, and he says, you know, I don't really want to do this because I don't do the creative stuff. Yeah, but I would argue, you know, you guys starting off in your career, you know, you need to do the creative stuff as well as the technical stuff. Yeah, that's how you're going to develop your careers further. And, you know, this is not simply about, you know, having fun, creating an interesting narrative and scenario about the future. I think, from my point of view, this can have a critical contribution to debates about technology, because I think one of the impressions that people have got about policy making at the moment is you have a great hype and enthusiasm about how new technologies are going to be deployed, and the people who are often so enthusiastic are not always thinking about the unintended consequences of new technologies. And so we want to kind of think, okay, what is the unintended consequence of digitizing the healthcare system and the benefits system? You know, what problems can we flag up? Yeah, as you know, you are the technical experts. What are the messages and warnings that you would like to give to policymakers? Yeah, and I think that's, you know, what's potentially interesting about these types of exercise. And also why I think this is important is the idea that we live in the time of Moore's law. Yeah, anyone know what Moore's law is? You must all know. What's Moore's law?
Every 18 months processor speed, but it's actually like density or something.
Yeah. Basically the exponential increase in the power and capacity of computing, and also the exponential growth in how people use computers in society and new technologies. And, you know, the Moore's law is a very kind of controversial debate, and there's, you know, currently, you know, a debate about whether it's flattening off and then it's going to kind of jump to new technologies like biotech. But what Moore's law potentially means is very radical, and it's that we are in the age of non-linear disruptive change. Yeah, what do you think non-linear change is?
Is that a constant rate of growth?
Yeah, it's the idea that, you know, who could say with any confidence what the world is going to be like and what technology is going to be like in 5, 10, 20 years? If growth is exponential, that messes everything up. Yeah, and I think that is the massive challenge for everyone, basically, policymakers, technologists, people interested in security, because having this accelerated rate of change means it becomes very hard to kind of make sense and predict what's going on. It's a very radical notion, because exponential growth means you can't simply take a back seat and think everything's going to stay stable. It's going to be kind of radical disruptive change. And linked to this, which makes the kind of contemporary world even more difficult, is there's radical uncertainty about what type of world we're heading into in the second decade of the 21st century. Now, the cliche is, in the Cold War, it was a time of certainty. Yeah? It would be very easy in many ways to be working in government during the Cold War. Yeah, because we knew who the bad guys were, and actually they weren't really the bad guys, because they were pretty much like us. Yeah, their universities were similar to us. Their kind of intellectual, philosophical worldview was very similar to us. Yeah, and if we were having this conversation in, say, 1980, and I said to you, "What's the world going to be like in 10 years?" What do you think you'd say?
I don't know.
Well, I think you'd probably say, well, it's going to be more Cold War. Yeah? I mean, one of the big debates in the subject I teach, international relations, is the fact that no one really saw the end of the Cold War coming. I mean, some people did in the policy world, but generally, the dominant view in the 80s was, the future of the world is the future of the Cold War. Yeah? And, the world divided into two, and we're just going to be playing our games, our power games, and it'll go on like that. Yeah. What happens in 1989? You get the collapse of the Cold War. Yeah, and the game changes. Yeah, and so then the debate becomes, well, what type of threats are we going to have in this world? Yeah, is it going to be climate change? Is it going to be the war on drugs? Who are our enemies in this world? Now, then add in Moore's law into that. It gets even more complicated, because you get this dynamic, radical change in the way the world is organised through new technology. Yeah, the globalisation of the world economy, and new actors playing a different role. Yeah, very quickly, China becomes a massive, powerful economic actor. Yeah, and you get the kind of radical speed up of financial markets, which arguably led to the kind of pretty dire situation we're in now. And so, everything just becomes very, very messy. Yeah. And so, what's the world going to be like in 10 years, 20 years? The only thing we can say for sure is it's going to be messy. It's going to be very different, but not necessarily worse. It's just going to be different. But what it means for kind of policymakers, politicians, people interested in security, is that everything is up for grabs. It's much more complex. So we need to start thinking about what type of problems are on the horizon. Yeah, because, if I think about the future of Europe, Europe by the end of this decade, what kind of situation is it going to be in? We like to think, I think, in Europe, that we're going to be at the top forever. Yeah, we kind of invented all the kind of great things in world history, and it's going to go on like that. But then if you look at what's going on right now, Europe could be a very different place geopolitically, geoeconomically, in the next 10 years. Yeah, I mean, I was reading something about Greece yesterday, and they were talking about, it's going to be permanent austerity for a very long time. Yeah, we're moving into a world of so many challenges, and Moore's law is going to play, I think, a key role in that. It's going to be kind of a world, lots and lots of messiness, lots and lots of problems, but rapid technological growth, exponential growth that's going to change how we live. And that's going to be interesting. It's not going to be negative, because there's a double meaning to the word crisis. Crisis is both, a dire situation and opportunity. Yeah, and so it's not. I don't want to come across as saying everything is negative, but we do confront very serious challenges. So what I want you to do today is think, okay, emerging technology, emerging kind of policy or social kind of tendency. How could a terrorist or a criminal network use that technology? How is it going to play out? Yeah, how is this thing going to kind of play out in reality? Yeah, so put your minds into the mindset of a terrorist, criminal, and we want to see what criminals might be doing in the next couple of years with the new technologies that's on the horizon. Now, is that clear to everybody? It's difficult. It's difficult to do it in an hour and 45 minutes, but what I've found doing this with previous groups is that the creativity of the process can lead to really interesting insights. It's things that we don't see that are often in front of us. And one of the big debates since 9/11 is about how we try and see the risk in contemporary life that we're kind of blind to. And when we've done this in, earlier in the year, one of the results of it was the creation of a new company, a new startup, by some guys who focused on medical security and medical terrorism because of the increasing digitalization of various medical technologies and services in healthcare. Before I'd done the exercise, medical terrorism, medical security, it wasn't on my radar. Yeah, and what I'm interested in is kind of uncovering the things that we haven't really thought about. Yeah, and I'm not saying we'll do that in the next hour and 45 minutes, but it's trying to flag up interesting problems that people aren't thinking about. So, you are in a really interesting situation. Got lots of interesting people here. You have good understanding of the technology. So let's see what you can come up with. Yeah. Okay, any questions? Okay, should we get cracking?
Yeah. So Mark and I are going to be floating around and helping you with this challenge. You've got the rooms upstairs that you can utilise for anything you need them for. Obviously, there's lots of processing capability up there, internet connectivity. Like I say, one of the things that we want to see is innovation, creativity in this space, and a really interesting presentation of what the future looks like in around this space. So, go, go, go.